Most people think you need a backyard to grow real food. You do not. These 15 vegetables have been tested by container gardeners across the country, and every one of them produces more than most people expect when you give them the right pot, the right soil, and a little focused attention. Whether you have a patio, a balcony, a front porch, or a windowsill with serious sunlight, this list will change the way you think about what is possible without a single square foot of ground. Subscribe to Evergreen Garden so you never miss a video like this one. Number 1 is cherry tomatoes. And nothing in the container garden world comes close to matching what a single plant can produce over a full season. A well-managed cherry tomato plant in a container can yield anywhere from 200 to 1,000 fruits before the first frost. Numbers that consistently surprise first-time container gardeners who expected disappointing production from a pot. Tomatoes originated in the Andes Mountains of South America, where wild species were small fruited plants growing on steep, dry hillsides. Spanish explorers brought them to Europe by the mid-1500s, and within decades they were in every Mediterranean kitchen garden. Early American colonists were skeptical at first because the tomato belongs to the nightshade family, and many assumed it was poisonous. Thomas Jefferson was growing them at Monticello by 1809 as a curiosity before wide acceptance followed. Modern plant science confirms that cherry tomatoes outperform larger varieties in container settings because they set fruit more easily under root stress, require less soil volume for a full harvest, and continue fruiting until cold temperatures stop them. Varieties like Sweet 100, Sun Gold, and Black Cherry are specifically recommended for containers because they have been bred for continuous production over a compact root zone. Use at least a 5-gallon pot per plant, though 10 gallons gives significantly better production. Provide a sturdy cage or stake, since even compact varieties grow heavy with fruit by midsummer. Full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours daily. Feed weekly with a balanced tomato fertilizer once fruits begin forming. Keep soil consistently moist. USDA zones 3 through 11 as a warm season annual. Number 2 is lettuce, and it earns its spot near the top of this list because it is the fastest way to get harvest-ready food from a container. A single pot of cut-and-come-again leaf lettuce can be harvested every 10 to 14 days, starting about 3 weeks after transplanting, meaning one planting feeds you repeatedly for 2 to 3 months before the plant bolts in summer heat. Lettuce was cultivated in ancient Egypt more than 4,500 years ago, where it was considered a sacred food of the fertility god Min, and appears in hieroglyphs carved into temple walls at Luxor and Karnak. By the time of the Roman Empire, lettuce varieties were being documented by scholars, including Pliny the Elder, who described multiple distinct types grown across the Mediterranean world. The container advantage for lettuce is its shallow root system. A pot that is 8 inches deep can support a productive planting, which means window boxes, troughs, and even repurposed colanders work perfectly. Research from university extension programs confirms that lettuce grown in containers often outperforms in-ground plantings because you can move the pot to avoid afternoon heat in summer, extending the harvest season by weeks. Sow seeds directly into moist potting mix and thin to 4 inches apart. Harvest outer leaves as needed, and the plant keeps producing from the center. Replant in late summer for a second fall crop. USDA zones 4 through 9 as a cool season annual. Number 3 is radishes. And if you have never grown them in a container, you are missing the fastest vegetable you can raise in a pot. Most varieties go from seed to harvest in 25 to 30 days, which makes them uniquely useful for gardeners who want results they can see and taste almost immediately. Radishes were cultivated in ancient Egypt and China more than 3,000 years ago, making them one of the oldest documented vegetable crops in human history. Greek historians record that workers building the pyramids were paid partly in radishes, onions, and garlic, which tells you how valued this humble root vegetable was in the ancient world. By the 16th century, radishes were among the first vegetables grown in the American colonies, and appeared in the earliest published American gardening guides. The container advantage is that radishes ask for almost nothing. A pot 6 inches deep, consistent sun, regular watering, and they handle the rest. Their shallow, fast root system makes them one of the most efficient producers per square inch of container space. Succession plant every 2 weeks through spring, and again in fall for continuous harvests with no storage required. Direct sow seeds ½ an inch deep in potting mix and thin to 2 inches apart. Varieties like French breakfast, cherry bell, and watermelon radish give you harvest windows ranging from 25 to 60 days and distinctly different textures and flavors across the season. Water consistently, since irregular moisture causes the roots to crack or become pithy. USDA zones 2 through 10 as a cool season annual that grows best when soil temperature stays between 50 and 65 degrees. Number 4 is green onions, also called scallions, and they may be the most underrated container vegetable on this list. A 6-inch pot filled with scallion seeds can be harvested in as little as 3 to 4 weeks, and if you cut them an inch above the soil line instead of pulling them, the same roots will regrow and give you 2 or 3 more harvests from a single planting. Bunching onions have been cultivated in China for at least 2,000 years, where they remain a foundational ingredient in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean cuisines today. European varieties arrived in American gardens with the earliest settlers, and Allium fistulosum has been documented in American seed catalogs continuously since the 1700s. What makes green onions such productive container plants is their efficient use of space and willingness to grow in both spring and fall when many other vegetables cannot handle the temperature swings. University extension research confirms that scallions grown in containers produce yields equivalent to in-ground plantings when given a minimum soil depth of 4 to 6 inches and consistent moisture. Sow seeds thickly in any container at least 4 inches deep. They tolerate light shade better than most vegetables, making them useful for porch or balcony spots where full sun is limited. USDA zones 6 through 9 as a perennial, grown as a reliable annual across most of the country from Zone 2 upward. Number 5 is sweet peppers, and they are one of the best-kept secrets in container vegetable growing. A single mature pepper plant in a large container can produce 30 to 50 peppers over the course of a season, continuing to set new fruit even as you harvest ripe ones as long as temperatures stay in the right range. Peppers originated in Central and South America, where wild species have been growing for more than 50 million years, and indigenous peoples were cultivating them for food and trade by at least 7,500 years ago. Spanish explorers brought them to Europe in the 15th century, and they spread so rapidly through Asia, the Middle East, and Africa that within 100 years, most of the world was growing them as though they had always been local crops. Modern research confirms that peppers are among the most heat-tolerant vegetables for container growing, which is an advantage because container soil warms faster than ground soil in spring, giving you an earlier start on the season. Compact varieties like Lunchbox, Potapeno, and Sweet Pickle have been specifically bred for small containers without sacrificing fruit production. Use at least a 5-gallon pot and grow in full sun. Feed with a fertilizer higher in phosphorus during flowering to maximize fruit set. Keep soil consistently moist but never waterlogged, as pepper roots are sensitive to standing water. USDA zones 9 through 11 as a perennial, grown as a warm season annual from Zone 3 upward. Number 6 is bush beans, and they are among the most productive vegetables you can grow per square inch of container space when conditions are right. Unlike pole beans, which need tall trellises and significant vertical space, bush beans stay compact at 18 to 24 inches and load up with pods over a 2 to 3 week window you can extend by making successive plantings 6 weeks apart. Beans have been cultivated in the Americas for at least 7,000 years, with archaeological evidence from Mexico and Peru showing they were a foundational food crop in complex native societies long before European contact. When Spanish explorers encountered them, they recognized something extraordinary, and within decades, beans were growing throughout Europe and Asia, becoming the most widely cultivated legume on Earth within a century. The container advantage is that bean plants in containers are easier to manage for disease because improved airflow reduces fungal pressure. Inoculating seeds with rhizobium bacteria at planting time activates the nitrogen-fixing root nodules and measurably increases yield in container settings. Use at least a 5-gallon container and direct sow seeds 1 inch deep, 4 inches apart. Full sun. Water consistently since beans drop their flowers and produce poor pods when they dry out during blooming. Harvest when pods snap cleanly and before seeds swell inside. USDA zones 3 through 10 as a warm season annual. Number 7 is kale, and it is one of the few vegetables that can provide continuous harvest from a single container planting for 6 months or longer in the right climate. The outer leaves can be harvested every 1 to 2 weeks from late spring all the way through fall, and often into winter, while the plant keeps pushing new growth from its center. Kale is among the oldest cultivated vegetables in recorded history, with references in ancient Greek and Roman texts describing it as a dietary staple for soldiers and laborers because of how nutritious and hearty it was in difficult conditions. It was among the most widely grown vegetables in Europe through the Middle Ages, feeding populations through cold seasons when almost nothing else could be harvested. Modern nutritional research confirms that kale contains more iron per calorie than beef, more calcium per calorie than milk, and among the highest concentrations of vitamins K, A, and C of any commonly eaten vegetable. A single regular harvest from one container plant provides a meaningful contribution to a week's nutritional needs. In a container, use at least a 5-gallon pot in full sun. Kale tolerates light frost and actually improves in flavor after frost because cold converts stored starches to sugars. Harvest outer leaves frequently to keep the plant actively producing. Lacinato, also called Tuscan or dinosaur kale, is particularly well suited to containers because its long, narrow leaves allow more plants to fit in a single pot without crowding or blocking light. USDA zones 7 through 9 as a biennial, grown as a productive annual from zone 2 through 11. Number 8 is cucumbers. And when people learn how many cucumbers a well-grown container plant can produce, they rarely believe it until they see it for themselves. A productive cucumber plant in a large container with adequate water, nutrients, and warmth can produce 10 to 20 cucumbers over a season. More if you harvest frequently, because regular picking signals the plant to keep setting new fruit. Cucumbers originated in South Asia, with cultivation evidence from India dating back more than 3,000 years. Ancient Egyptians were eating them by at least 2000 BCE, and they spread rapidly through the ancient Middle East and Mediterranean world. By the Roman Empire, cucumbers were considered such a luxury that Emperor Tiberius reportedly demanded them on his table every day of the year, requiring Roman gardeners to develop early forms of greenhouse cultivation to produce them in winter. Bush and compact varieties, including bush pickle, space master, and patio snacker, were developed specifically for container growing and produce at rates comparable to vining varieties in the ground. Use a minimum 10-gallon container and provide a small trellis or stake, since even bush varieties benefit from some vertical support. Full sun, consistent moisture, and a balanced fertilizer every 2 weeks from flowering onward. Keep harvesting regularly, since cucumbers left past peak size signal the plant to stop producing. USDA zones 4 through 12 as a warm season annual. Number 9 is Swiss chard. And if you want a single plant that gives you ongoing harvests across a long season in a medium-sized container, this is the one to choose. The colorful stems in red, yellow, orange, and white, and the large glossy leaves are not just decorative. Harvested correctly, a Swiss chard plant produces for 5 to 6 months continuously, providing nutritious cooked greens that substitute for spinach in any recipe. Swiss chard is a close relative of the beet, both descending from wild sea beet plants that grew along the Mediterranean and North Atlantic coasts for thousands of years. It was documented in ancient Assyrian and Babylonian texts, and Greek physicians, including Aristotle, referenced it as both a medicinal and dietary plant. By the 16th century, it was growing in virtually every European kitchen garden. Modern research confirms that Swiss chard contains exceptionally high levels of magnesium, which plays a key role in blood sugar regulation, along with antioxidant compounds including syringic acid and betalains, being actively studied for metabolic health effects. The stems and midribs can be cooked separately from the leaves, giving you 2 different textures and culinary applications from every single harvest. Use a 5-gallon pot at minimum, in full sun to partial shade. Swiss chard tolerates more heat than spinach and more cold than most summer vegetables, giving it an unusually long productive window. Harvest outer leaves when they reach 8 to 10 inches and leave the center to keep growing. USDA zones 6 through 10 as a biennial, grown as an annual across most of the country. Number 10 is spinach. And almost no vegetable gives you more food value per container per cool season week than a well-grown spinach planting. A pot 12 inches wide planted with spinach seeds can provide meaningful harvests every week for 6 to 8 weeks. And in climates with long springs and falls, you can run 2 full crops per year from the same container. Spinach was first cultivated in ancient Persia, in what is now Iran, at least 2,000 years ago. Arab traders carried it to China by the 7th century, and it arrived in Europe through Spain by the 11th century, where it quickly became a staple in monastic and royal kitchen gardens. By the colonial period, it was well established in American kitchen gardens from New England to Virginia. Research confirms that spinach is among the most nutritionally concentrated vegetables available, with high levels of folate, iron, vitamin K, and lutein, the last of which is being actively studied for protective effects on eye health and age-related macular degeneration in older adults. Sow seeds directly in moist potting mix in a container at least 6 inches deep. Full sun in cool weather, light shade in warmer conditions to delay bolting. Harvest outer leaves continuously rather than pulling entire plants. Spinach bolts once temperatures consistently exceed 75 degrees Fahrenheit. USDA zones 3 through 9 as a cool season annual. Number 11 is arugula, and it is the fastest growing leafy green on this list. Seeds sprout within 5 to 7 days of planting, and first harvest-ready leaves appear within 3 weeks, which makes it one of the most immediately rewarding vegetables a container gardener can grow. That peppery, nutty flavor has made it one of the most popular salad greens in American kitchens over the past 2 decades. But arugula has been cultivated around the Mediterranean basin for at least 2,000 years. Roman soldiers ate it raw as part of their field rations because it grew fast in disturbed soil, was portable, and added real flavor to otherwise monotonous camp food. Italian cooks have used it continuously since the Roman era, and it remains a staple in Italian antipasto and pizza to this day. The container advantage for arugula is its shallow root system, which makes it productive in pots as shallow as 4 to 6 inches. It also tolerates partial shade well, which matters for patio and balcony growers who do not have full sun all day. The slightly bitter quality it develops in warm weather is a sign it is building up glucosinolates, compounds that current research associates with cancer-protective properties in the diet. Sow seeds thickly in any container and thin to 4 inches apart. Harvest outer leaves or shear the entire planting back by half and let it regrow for multiple cuts. USDA zones 3 through 11 as a cool season annual. Number 12 is bush peas, and they are one of the most rewarding cool season vegetables you can grow in a container because the harvest window is concentrated and the flavor difference between garden fresh and store-bought is among the most striking of any vegetable on this list. A pot of bush peas planted in early spring can be producing pods within 60 to 70 days and will give you a harvest period of about 3 to 4 weeks before warm weather ends the season. Peas are among the oldest cultivated vegetables in recorded history, with carbon-dated remains found at Swiss archaeological sites going back 5,000 years, and ancient Egyptian tomb paintings that include pea pods among foods depicted as offerings. Thomas Jefferson grew more than 30 varieties at Monticello, holding friendly competitions with his neighbors each spring to see who could bring the first fresh pea to the dinner table. Bush pea varieties like Little Marvel, Patio Pride, and Tom Thumb were specifically developed for small space and container growing and produce compact, heavily loaded plants that rarely need staking. Sow seeds directly in a container at least 8 inches deep, 2 to 3 inches apart. They prefer cool, moist soil and perform best between 45 and 65 degrees. They tolerate light frost and should go in as early as 6 weeks before your last frost date. Unlike pole peas, bush varieties need minimal staking, though a few short twigs pushed into the container give the tendrils something to grip and keep plants upright as the pods fill in and add weight. USDA zones 2 through 11 as a cool season annual. Number 13 is eggplant, and it is perhaps the most surprisingly productive container vegetable for gardeners who have never tried it in a pot. In a warm climate with consistent care, A single eggplant plant in a large container can produce 10 to 12 fruits per season, each weighing half a pound or more depending on the variety, which is a genuinely substantial harvest from a single pot. Eggplant originated in South Asia and has been cultivated in India and China for at least 1,500 years. Arab traders carried it across the Islamic world during the medieval period, and it reached Mediterranean Europe by the 15th century. It arrived in the Americas through European colonizers and was growing in kitchen gardens across the South and Mid-Atlantic by the early 1700s. Compact varieties developed for container growing include Patio Baby, Fairy Tale, and Little Prince, all of which produce clusters of smaller fruits that mature more quickly than standard varieties and continue producing through the season. The key to productive eggplant in containers is heat, since it is among the most heat-loving vegetables in common cultivation. Container soil warms faster than ground soil, which gives container-grown eggplant an actual advantage in spring. Use a 5-gallon or larger container, full sun, and consistent water. Feed every 2 weeks with a balanced fertilizer once flowering begins. USDA zones 9 through 12 as a perennial, grown as a warm season annual from zone 3 upward. Number 14 is beets, and they deserve more attention from container gardeners than they typically receive. A beet plant gives you 2 crops from a single planting, the edible root below and the nutritious greens above, making it one of the highest value crops per square inch of container space on this list. Beets have been cultivated since the ancient Egyptian period, where both the roots and the greens appear in historical records as food and medicine. The Romans were significant beet growers, and Apicius, the ancient Roman cookbook author, included beet recipes that closely resemble preparations still common in Central and Eastern European cuisines today. Early American colonists grew beets extensively because they stored well through winter and appear in virtually every early American kitchen garden record. Modern research has confirmed that beets contain high concentrations of nitrates that the body converts to nitric oxide, which relaxes blood vessels and has been shown in multiple controlled trials to lower resting blood pressure by measurable amounts in healthy adults. Use a container at least 12 inches deep and direct sow seeds 1 inch deep, 3 inches apart. Full sun preferred. Thin seedlings to give roots room to develop. Harvest when roots reach golf ball to tennis ball size, which typically comes earlier than expected. USDA zones 2 through 11 as an annual, perennial in zones 9 through 11. Number 15 is zucchini. And nothing quite captures what is possible in a large container like a well-grown zucchini plant. One plant in a 15-gallon or larger container, given full sun and consistent water, can produce a zucchini every 2 to 3 days during peak season, which is a rate of production almost no other vegetable can match in sheer pounds of food per plant. Zucchini is a New World vegetable, domesticated by indigenous peoples in Mexico at least 9,000 years ago as part of the ancient Three Sisters farming system alongside corn and beans. Spanish explorers brought it back to Europe in the 16th century, where Italian farmers in the Campania region developed the dark green-skinned variety most Americans recognize today. The word zucchini itself is Italian, meaning little squash. Modern horticultural trials have shown that zucchini plants in containers are actually easier to manage for disease than in-ground plants because the improved airflow around a raised container reduces the powdery mildew pressure that is the most common problem zucchini growers face. Container growing also makes hand pollination straightforward when bee activity is limited on balconies and patios. Use a small paintbrush to transfer pollen from male flowers to female flowers on the same morning they open, and you eliminate the most common cause of fruit failure in contained spaces. Use a 15-gallon container at minimum. Full sun, at least 8 hours daily. Water deeply and consistently since zucchini plants wilt dramatically under stress, and that stress causes bitter, misshapen fruits. Harvest at 6 to 8 inches before the skin hardens. Once you stop harvesting, the plant stops producing. Keep picking and it keeps giving. USDA zones 3 through 12 as a warm season annual. Those are 15 vegetables that reward you generously when you give them the right container and the right conditions. The pattern across all of them is the same. consistent water, adequate container size, full sun where possible, and regular feeding once plants are actively producing. Container gardening is more forgiving than most people expect, and more productive than most people believe before they try it. If you are just starting out, pick 2 or 3 from this list, give them a proper pot and decent potting mix, and water them every day in summer heat. You will be surprised what comes out of it by the end of the season. Subscribe to Evergreen Garden if you have not already, and leave a comment telling us which of these 15 you are growing this year. We read every single one.